Good morning. Our gospel passage this morning comes to us from Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 22. I mention that because if you're not joining us in worship, then now you can go and read that passage for yourself and then come back and listen to what we're going to say about it. Nothing. We're not going to say anything about it. If you've read it, you get it. It's one of those few times in the Bible that we can just read the words and we can know for sure that we don't do what Jesus taught. This is not a controversial area of theology. This is just a teaching Jesus offered. His disciples said, what do I do with the person who did me wrong? And how many times am I supposed to forgive them? And Jesus said what Jesus said. So I'm actually much more interested in using our time this morning, not to talk about the gospel or what it means, because you know what it means. Now that you've read the words yourself, you know exactly what Jesus is asking us all to do. And we know we don't do it. We don't go talk to one another directly about the problems that we have. We very rarely have conversations with people who aren't family or best friends in order to maintain connection and relationship with them. We just rarely do it. And we almost never welcome in another person to try to help resolve the conflict. And we never, ever, ever call in the whole community to resolve the conflict with one person. We just don't do these things. So I'm not interested in talking more about the Bible as much as I'm interested in talking about why. Why do we not do these things? Why are we so conflict averse? And it's a really important question. At the beginning of this pandemic, our church said that the most important thing we can do is remain connected as a church. And it's incredibly hard to do that. We have close to 300 people who are connected to this church on a regular basis every year. And in a time of pandemic, when we're not allowed to gather in big numbers, it has been incredibly difficult to know how to stay connected. Why? Why is it so hard? Well, today we're going to do a quick experiment with magnets that I think teaches us why it's so hard. You know about magnets. They're so fun. I have a 1-year-old at home. He loves magnets. They magically connect. And then if you turn them around, they don't connect at all. And that's pretty fun too. And we know scientifically it's polar same sides of magnets. They repel each other. It's the polar opposite sides that connect. It's the polar opposite sides of the magnets that connect like magic, like that. And it's the same sides that do this, that create friction, conflict, that they push against each other. I think the reason why it's so difficult for us to connect, and it's so difficult for us to have these honest conversations, one-on-one or two-on-one or all together, in order to maintain friendship and relationship and love and mutuality, I think the reason why we are so bad at doing that is because we happen to live in a country that for the first several hundred years of its existence insisted that you have to have everything in common. You have to be the same, exactly the same in order to get along. But we know that that's not how it works. We know that connection through sameness is actually conflict. And so what did we do? We painted over that conflict. And we held together, pretending that being the same means that we are in good relationship with each other. And friends, it's just not true. If we're pretending that we're all exactly the same, we're not in relationship at all. We're just holding together this loose connection through anxiety and fear, rather than following what is natural, which is to connect with people who are not like us. We've been taught a lie our whole lives. And now here we are, the most prosperous nation in the history of the world, very much not at peace with one another. And I think it's because we've chosen to replace direct communication, mutual love and respect and admiration with this anxious, stressful way of trying to keep similar people on the same side. There's a place where I've been driving a lot lately around, not in Kittery, outside of Kittery. And it caught my eye because it's two houses on opposite sides of the street. The houses look very identical. They clearly have a lot in common, these people who live here. But there's one noticeable difference. On this side, there's a Trump-Pence 2020 sign. And on this side, in this person's yard, is a Black Lives Matter sign and a Biden-Harris 2020 sign. And every time I drive by these houses and I see these neighbors right across the street with their signs that are so diametrically opposed, I can't help but wonder if they've ever talked to each other. Have they gotten together and tried to connect through their differences? Or do they just sit in their homes across the street from one another and focus on how this isn't working anymore? They used to be able to cover up their differences. They used to be able to hide their disagreements. They used to be able to be bonded by being neighbors right across the street. And now that there's something noticeably different, they're not connected at all, and they're terrified to talk to each other. I don't know if that's true. I just wonder, because I don't know the people who live there. But I know how I am. And I know that if somebody has a problem with me, I'm not very likely to go talk to them. And I found that in my life, if I have a problem with somebody else, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of energy for me to go talk to that person directly. Why is that? St. Paul describes God's peace as surpassing all understanding. Peace is a gift that God births into the world. The ability to breathe, to rest, to feel good in your body. That is a gift from God for all of us. So why don't we feel that peace more often? Why aren't connections more magical and easy? Why do we live so much of our lives right now in this tense, anxious space where we really have to force ourselves to hold it all together? I think it's because we've spent so long dehumanizing each other. It's gotten to the point where we only recognize as human the people who agree with us, the people who are the same as us, people who look the same, people who believe the same, people who vote the same. And the really horrible thing about dehumanizing others is that it takes away our own humanity. So we totally forget what it is to be God's beloved children, just walking around, connecting like magic to people who are not like us. Turns out Paula Abdul had it right 30 years ago. Opposites attract. But when we are so busy dehumanizing one another, we can't see that. We only cling to sameness, and we struggle, and we are anxious to hold it all together. It doesn't work. In order for God's peace to spread across the globe, we have to, or even just in our lives, on our own streets, we have to be willing to talk directly to each other. We have to be willing to connect even with people who don't seem to be like us. And it is a challenge. So for you, I have just this one thing to offer that might make it easier. Rehumanize your neighbors. Rehumanize yourself. What does that look like? Well, the next time you find yourself in conflict, the next time you find yourself with something that needs to be said because you have been wronged, you have been hurt, and you need to help make it better, come up with 5 positives about whoever you're talking to. 5 affirmations. I guarantee you that no matter how difficult, how challenging this one issue is, if you come up with 5 affirmations that you can share with that person, it's not going to be a difficult conversation because you've demonstrated that you are 5 times more willing to tell them how beloved and how wonderful and awesome they are. And that makes it a lot easier to talk about this one negative thing. Let me demonstrate. I have something I need to say to this worshiping community. So I'm going to start with these 5 things. You are God's beloved child. You are unique in the universe. No one like you has ever been here. No one like you will ever be here again. You are beloved by God. God pours out abundant blessings for you in your life every single day. You are deserving of every good thing in this life, and you are undeserving of every tragedy that ever befalls you. You do not deserve the bad things you get, and you are so deserving of all the good things that happen. You are worth more than any treasure. You are the treasure. I love your laugh. Whoever you are watching this video, whenever you're watching it, I love your laugh. And I can't wait to hear it again. So now that I've said these 5 wonderful affirming things to you, I actually feel no anxiety at all about sharing this one big thing with you. I need you to show up. God needs you to show up. We're living in an incredibly difficult moment. It's a scary time. Our country really does seem to be coming apart at the seams. And regardless of how you feel about it, there's going to be an election, a national election, in less than 2 months. We really need everybody to bring their best selves to the table, to have honest conversations, to go out and reclaim your brothers and your sisters and your non-gender binary people, your siblings. We have to go get each other and have the difficult conversations that are required for maintaining a peaceful society. We need to have these conversations together, and it's going to go so much more smoothly if we're willing to affirm one another while we challenge each other. Friends, you are beloved. There's a peace in this world that surpasses all understanding. We don't have to agree on everything. We don't even have to understand everything. And how often are we supposed to forgive? Countless times. So friends, set aside your anxiety. Breathe easy. And know that at least in this church space, anytime you need to come and talk about a difficult thing, whether it be about me or a neighbor or something happening in our community, know this. From this day forward, you're going to be greeted by 5 affirmations first, because God's peace is real and undeniable, like a magnet.